Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today we will be ranking all of the coasters at Kings Island. So let's just jump right into this. Kings Island is an amusement park in Mason, Ohio. The park was owned by Cedar Fair, but with the recent merger, they are now technically owned by Six Flags. The park boasts a collection of 15 coasters ranging from small family coasters to a Mini Giga. And just like when I ranked the coasters of Six Flags Fiesta Texas, these are just my opinions. At number 15, we have Great Pumpkin Coaster. This is an E&F Myler Kiddie coaster, and it does nothing. I mean, it goes in a circle with a cute backdrop, but yep, that's it. It's a kiddie coaster. Enough said, moving on. At number 14, we have Snoopy's Air Rail. This is just a typical Vekoma hang and bang, which technically is called a suspended family coaster. It basically just rattles around and bangs your head with almost no forces and is really just a waste of space. The newer ones are... Actually, I haven't been on the newer suspended family coasters, but I can imagine they're much better than these old hang and bangs. At number 13, we have Invertigo. This is a Vekoma suspended boomerang. It has decent forces in the vertical loop and the cobra roll, which are quite whippy, but the terrible over-the-shoulder restraints just make you bash your head around, and it just does not make for a very good ride experience. Even with the intensity and the whip, you can't really get over the headbanging and very rough nature of the ride. At number 12, we have Adventure Express. This is one of the larger aero mine trains and is very janky in a bad way. The whole ride, you have to brace for impact as your neck is whipped from side to side during the awful transitions. The ride is also very rattly, and honestly, the only good thing is it's nice setting on the hill. I will give it that. It uses its terrain very well to pick up speed, but the speed just makes the jankiness and bad transitions even worse and more pronated. The ride also got a recent retheme, which is actually a very good retheme. It's got good adventurous traps and statues, and some decent new on-ride audio, at least in the final lift hill climb into the brake run. So the theming is good, but other than that, it's a very rough and janky aero mine train. At number 11, we have Flight of Fear. This is a Premier Ride Spaghetti Bowl coaster. The layout is a clone of Poltergeist at Fiesta Texas and is nowhere near as good, at least to me. The launch is on par, but Flight of Fear was much shakier and rougher than Poltergeist, and Flight of Fear has a mid-course brake run in the middle that brings the train to an absolutely dead stop, which just kills the pacing for the rest of the ride. It does make the rest of the ride a bit smoother than the first half, but honestly, I'd take a little bit more shakiness if the inversions in the second half of the ride has as much whip and the ride has as much positive G-forces in the second half as it did the first. So, it's good, but could be better. At number 10, we have Snoopy's Soapbox Racers. This was my first Vekoma family boomerang, and I have to say, I wasn't impressed by it. The ride pulled no forces, and there was no airtime at all. But for a family coaster, I will say I fit in the trains very well, and it is very smooth, although that may be because it's brand new for this year. But I am going to give the family boomerang the benefit of the doubt, because this is the smaller version. So maybe the bigger versions are better, but I will say this one is just kind of boring. But you know, it's smooth and doesn't beat me up, so I'll take that. At number 9, we have Woodstock Express. This is one of my favorite wooden Woodstock Express clones, the one at Kings Island, because this one actually has two decent airtime pops and some pretty good laterals for a family coaster. It doesn't do too much, but for being a relatively old Woodie, it's not super old, but it's not brand new either, and because I know newer wooden coasters are much rougher than this thing, and you know, it's pretty smooth for that. It's got that nice janky wooden coaster feel. And the couple pops of airtime definitely help make it a better ride. At number 8, we have Backlot Stunt Coaster. This is one of the Backlot clones, and these are actually pretty fun. The ride starts off with a super forceful upward helix, then a fun low-to-the-ground twister section with some cop cars and other theming, as it's supposed to be like you're doing a stunt job on a backlot of a Hollywood filming. After the twister section, the train pops up into a small show scene with actual fire and a helicopter. This scene is actually pretty cool, and the fire is a nice touch to this little ride. It then leads into a small indoor portion that ends with a pop of ejector airtime that is actually very strong in the back row. The trains are a little small and the restraints can staple, plus the ride is a little rattly, but not bad. But overall, it's a decent ride with a very punchy launch at the beginning. At number 7, we have Racer. This is a classic racing wooden coaster, and both tracks are essentially the same. A little bit of mirroring in the turnarounds, but other than that, basically the same ride. It's pretty smooth for a Woodie and has decent airtime pops and some good laterals. And it's just a fun classic wooden coaster. And I wish that we had something like this in Florida, this well maintained. We don't even have a classic Woodie here in Florida, really. And I honestly find the more that I ride the good classic wooden coasters that are well maintained and kept relatively smooth, but still have like a little bit of bumpiness to them, I honestly just enjoy them for that classic feel, something I can't get at home. At number 6, we have the Bat. This is one of the larger aero suspended coasters and is way out in the back of the park and is set on a hill and definitely uses that to its advantage. The ride has amazing laterals, and while it doesn't have any airtime, the swinging adds amazing whip and some jankiness to the ride, which makes it feel even faster than it is. The ride is a load of fun, and again, not the best coaster in the park, but one with solid forces and an absolutely amazing setting. Now, to kick off the top 5, we have the Beast. This is a massive wooden coaster, and you want to talk about terrain interaction? This ride uses the forest to its advantage. The ride features over a mile of track, and it doesn't feature much airtime, but the laterals on every turn are just absolutely phenomenal. The ride starts off after the first drop by going down into a tunnel, before immediately popping out and just ripping through the woods. The trims hit a little too hard, but are kind of necessary because the ride is just so out of control, and you'd probably hurt your neck on some of the turns if the trims didn't hit as hard as they did. There are multiple tunnels on the ride, and the drop off the second lift is very weird, as you start by slowly descending, kind of just thumping down the hill a little bit, but you're gradually picking up speed before just slamming into a massive helix in the tunnel, which provides just amazing laterals and crazy whip on the entry. Unfortunately, I have not experienced this ride at night. Apparently, it gives the best night rides on the planet, but I did get to ride it in an absolutely torrential downpour, and that was one of the most fun coaster experiences I've ever done. The ride was even more out of control then than ever, and it just made the ride so much crazier. It's a little rough, but it received some new track recently, and that's definitely helped, and honestly, the ride is just not as good as the other 4, but it has potential to be the best in the park. At number 4, we have Banshee. This is the longest inverted coaster on the planet and is a pretty fun ride. Unfortunately, inverts are naturally not one of my favorite coaster types, but this one is better than most. The twisted drop has great whip, and the first few inversions are also decently whippy. The pretzel knot inversion has decent forces, and I love the inline roll at the end because it features amazing airtime. Or not airtime, I'm sorry, hang time. The ending helix is also pretty whippy, and the ride doesn't feature as high of positive Gs as the other inverts, but is fun nonetheless. I also love the restraints on the ride because they feature the vests, which most people don't like, but they prevent any headbanging, which is really good because a lot of inverts feature the old hard over-the-shoulder restraints, which has a good amount of headbanging sometimes. But overall, it's a very good ride, very smooth, and a lot of fun. To start off the top 3, we have Orion. This is what I would call a B&M Mini Giga, because the lift isn't quite 300 feet tall, but the drop is over 300 feet, so it is technically a Giga, but I think it's best just to call it a Mini Giga. The ride features decent airtime and some pretty good positive G-forces. The restraints are comfortable, of course, because they feature the B&M clamshells, which are up there with some of my favorite coaster restraints. The ride does focus more on speed than forces or airtime, but overall, I do enjoy the ride, and let me just say, there's a speed hill on the ride that features an amazing pop of flow-jector airtime. At number 2, we have Diamondback. This is a B&M Hyper with the longer trains, and honestly, I think they allow for more whip in the back. Some people say it slows down the pacing of the ride, but I personally prefer the staggered seating and longer trains. The ride does have a decent rattle to it, but it's bearable. The airtime on the drop and all the hills is super strong, and you are just absolutely flying out of your seat for a good amount of time on every hill. All the turns are whippy and feature good laterals, and the helix near the end has good forces. The splashdown is a fun visual, and even the pull-up into the final brakes has a very strong airtime. This one also features the amazing clamshell restraints. And for my favorite coaster at Kings Island, we have the amazing GCI Woodie, Mystic Timbers. This ride is just insanely out of control. You start off with a small pre-lift before the variable speed lift, where you're given warnings by the security guard to leave, and one final reminder to not go in the shed. Don't go in the shed. The ride then takes off like a bat out of heck as it charges down the twisted first drop, and every hill and turn features either ejector airtime, laterals, or both. The ride features a good mix of straight bunny hops, twisted airtime hills, and off-axis hills. The turnaround features amazing laterals, and I rode the ride 9 times the day that I visited last, and surprisingly did not get bruises from the airtime. The ride ends with you approaching the shed and being told it's a restricted area and not to go inside, before the audio falters and changes to, "Go in the shed. Go in the shed."
This is a restricted area. Don't go in the shed. This is a restricted area. This is a restricted. Don't go in the restricted. Go in the shed. Go in the shed.
The train enters the shed, and one of a couple different old school songs play before a screen at the end features either a snake, a tree, or a bat creature. Overall, the shed isn't that crazy, but the ride itself definitely is, and is an amazing and out-of-control experience, and probably one of the most fun coasters I've ever been on. And I will say, this is definitely the best wooden and/or hybrid coaster in Ohio. But those are my rankings from Kings Island. The park as a whole is very nice in some areas and not that great in others, but the coasters range from bad to some of the best I've ever experienced. And honestly, it's just a good mix of coasters in general and a very nice park. But that's all for this time, and I'll see you all next time on another adventure.